in my head, the only way to make money from art was going through galleries, and I got to paint this ultra realistic way of these. That's where I would see the how to make a living off of them.
So first I want to thank Powwow, of course, for allowing me the opportunity to do this. This talk is actually powered by Imprint Lab as well, so I want to thank them too. Jasper, of course, for putting all of this together. All the hard work that goes into it is incredible. And always allowing me to have this one-to-one conversation live. The one-to-one series is actually a video series that lives online, in case you don't know. It's on Vimeo. And I've interviewed many creators, artists, musicians, over the past few years. And really the impetus for doing it originally was because I always felt that when I read interviews of people that I respected in the creative arts or the creative industry, it was never the same as when you meet them and have a conversation with them over dinner or something. It was sort of like journalists' interviews are always sort of like glorified Wikipedia pages. It's just like, what do you do, how much you sell your work for, and when you die, So I wanted to sort of get deeper into the process of it all and like why people do the things they do, how they go about executing it. We see all this amazing art, and one of the great things about Powwow is you can sort of see it live in action, which is a very rare thing that a lot of artists, quite honestly, don't want to share with people because it is sort of like a sacred process, So recently I started doing one-to-one live series, which I think adds another dynamic by having an audience here. And afterwards, we're going to do a Q&A too, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So we're going to get into tonight's thing, and this snare is like snaring at me. I'm going to move it up. Is there like an off button for a snare drum?
Yeah, on the side, you could.
Stop lying. Is there really an off button? Okay, thank you. Shout out to Hex as well. Hex, Tran from Hex. Okay, so going into tonight's talk, thank you.
No worries.
There's a couple of professions that I really, really greatly respect, and one of them is art. Artists do things that like are just incredible to me because they can manifest something from nothing. That's like what I do, which is like business and fashion and design. It's like bullshit in comparison to art, because what I do is like I take other people's skill sets. Like there's like a fabric maker, a sewer, a button maker, a store, and I just sort of like conduct all of that together. Whereas artists and musicians, they make something from something that wasn't there before. So I always have great respect for artists. The other thing that I have great respect for is people who surf, and it's because I've attempted surfing and I failed miserably. I started as a skater and then was a skier, and then now I'm an avid snowboarder, but I thought I could make the easy transition into surfing. But when you're surfing, again, it's sort of like, you go from skating on concrete to snowboarding on snow, which is closer to nature. But when you're surfing, you and Mother Nature have to be like totally in sync in one, or she basically kicks your ass. So when I see surfing, it's like the most beautiful, natural thing to me. And then the third thing that I find really inspiring, that's sort of a newer thing, is this whole thing of like sort of urban archaeology, this like sort of modern day Indiana Jones now, where people are like discovering sort of like untapped territories that normally wouldn't have been seen. And my theory is that that's always been the case. There's always been people exploring, but because of social media and the internet and Instagram, now those people can share what they're seeing, and so we get to see all of these things too. And so the person that I'm about to interview for you guys has somehow ridiculously done all three of those things at one time. He's done three really, really difficult and inspiring things and merged them into one form of art. And I can't wait to share with you and hope he shares some of his process as well. Everyone, please welcome Sean Yoro, aka HULA.
Hello, hello.
What's up? How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
You guys.
All right, so first the name. Okay, is your mic working?
It's good.
Okay, so first I think we should just get this out of the way because it's an introduction. Why the name? Your real name's Sean.
Yeah, real name.
Maybe we should turn off this equipment too, Tran. Like maybe it's the amps and stuff. Eventually we'll just be on the floor. Okay. Oops.
All right, now go into
Okay.
Makes that loud noise.
No, I think you're good now.
Okay.
Okay.
So real name Sean. Sean. Originally, I kind of played with a couple different street names, but HULA kind of incorporated where I was from, as well as it has a cool history. Anyone who knows HULA, Hawaiians used to do it traditionally for the gods back in the day, and then it kind of was forbidden when the Christians came. And then from there, it got kind of brought back, and nowadays it's either for tourism or it's for the traditional Hawaiian dance of, which is formerly known as kahiko. So it kind of played with some parallels with the street art world, and I feel like everyone does kind of the street art in for their own, I guess, yeah, I guess it's for their own reason.
Yeah.
Which is the same I feel in HULA. There's kind of a mix of people who do it for tourism and business, and people who do it traditionally for not really the religious part, but definitely traditional ways, and especially with the music and all that. So it's kind of a mix of both, and I just thought it shows where I'm from right off the bat, and it's kind of short and easy.
Yeah. Cool. Before you did the street art, what were you doing?
Before street art, I was actually kind of a typical local boy back in Hawaii. I was lifeguarding, so I kind of was going along the route. I kind of wanted to be a lifeguard I kind of wanted just the beach boy life, and I was surf instructing, lifeguarding, kind of cliche, but yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. And then how did you stumble into becoming an artist, actually? Like, were you always creative?
Not really. My mom can attest to that. I never really drew much.
Wait, your mom's here?
Yeah, my mom's right here. From Hawaii.
You gotta give it up to the moms.
But yeah, I kind of stumbled into it. I was taking some classes at a community college, and I stumbled into a life drawing class where you just draw live portraits, and I've always been kind of interested in drawing, but not a huge passion until I stepped into that class. And I remember the first day of that class, I was just like blown away. Like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
It just hit you instantly?
Pretty instantly, yeah. I mean, I was terrible at it though. It was the worst drawing. Like, I don't even think I kept them. But it was. I think the instructor too had a lot to do with it. He just kind of gave you the confidence to. I mean, he. I think looking back on it, I think he pretended that I had a gift, but I'm really glad that he did, because it kind of just like sparked a little fire that I had. And
Yeah,
I loved it since then.
so once you did that, you were like, no more professional lifeguard, like surf instructing.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of, I always thought it would be a backup, like with art. It was such a long shot. Basically, right after I took that class, the next summer I ended up moving out to New York, and it was just a long shot. Like, I kind of just wanted to see where it took me, and I thought, the typical kind of New York scene, or what I had in my head was, I'm gonna go pursue art in New York, and that cliche of just, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere kind of thing stuck with me. So yeah, I kind of had lifeguarding still as a backup plan, if it failed. But I definitely like wanted to just go all out on this dream of mine. And yeah, I kind of naively went into it, not really gauging exactly, how much it would take, but I'm glad I kind of went into it like that.
Did you think like what was the reason for having to choose New York?
Honestly, it was because I knew one person there, and like anyone who grew up in that kind of a small community knows how hard it is to get work done. On an island, you're kind of just surrounded by friends, so it's really comfortable. You can always call someone up, you can go surf. So I kind of thought I could never get something done, and I knew how much hours it would take to that classic 10,000 hour rule. I had it in the back of my head, and I knew I just need to isolate myself and get in, get out, get my hours paid, and see how quick I could do it.
Mm-hmm. And did you save up a lot of, because New York is one of the most expensive cities in the world to live in, so did you save up a lot of money to go?
Going with that naive mentality, I saved up a whole, I think it was $700 or $800.
Nice.
So
that's like 2 nights dinner.
Exactly, in Manhattan.
That's pretty good. Yeah, half a month's rent or something. Okay, so, but obviously, this incredible work that we're seeing here, we're not at this stage yet.
No.
You're still like
far.
You're still like conceptualizing, right? So
yeah.
When you get to New York, tell us what sort of art you were doing at the time.
I was always drawn to figures. I was always drawn to realism. So I kind of was still, I guess, I was always making my own curriculum, I guess you would say. I would never really learn much in school, even the class that I took drawing-wise. It was never, it's just the way my brain works. I'm too stubborn, so I need to learn myself. So I ended up, always, I guess, basing my curriculum around kind of the Renaissance artists. And there's a lot of traditional painters now, like contemporary artists in New York. Like David Casson is a really good portrait artist. I learned a lot from him. And so I kind of, there's so much you can learn on the internet nowadays. There's, YouTube videos, blogs. So I read a lot of books on that old master's kind of way of painting.
Like this?
Yeah, so this is a charcoal piece, one of my earlier works. But I was just fascinated by mostly just capturing life and just the with some especially charcoal, being able to capture, or I guess the form of things, and it only took 2 or 3 hours to make some kind of life with this paper and black and white charcoal.
Yeah,
that really fascinated me.
And how long did it take for you to advance to sort of this more style that you're known for now?
I would say a good 3.5 years of studying on my own. So I was studying on my own in a little studio, and it was, I was, practicing all this realism, but not doing any street art at all. I did a lot of kind of smaller gallery work. These are all small paintings. So I was kind of just honing in my techniques of trying to paint this old master style of realism.
And are you still poor as hell?
Thankfully not.
No. 3 years ago.
Now?
Yeah, no, 3
3 years ago.
Yeah.
I was. Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, I ran out of money.
Because I was going to ask you for money right now. You were poor, so while you're still honing your craft, you have no job.
Yeah. Now I kind of did the typical New York hustle where I had 2 or 3 restaurant bar jobs. Did art on the side when I could, but then I ended up spending all this time, in restaurants and really just trying to make the ridiculous rent that New York charges. So I ended up dropping down to, I think, one job and living in these little tiny offices illegally, actually. So I lived in like this 8x10 office with just an easel, my desk, and a sleeping bag. And it was, for 2.5 years I did that, and I kind of just...
Did you ever think, I've made a mistake?
Plenty of times, yeah.
Yeah?
I would, especially in the dead of winter in New York.
Right, like Hawaii sounds pretty nice right now.
Yeah,
Damn.
that backup plan of lifeguarding never sounded so good.
Right.
And it was hard because it was always there. I could have always went back
Yeah.
and been stuck in that. I don't want to say a comfortable life, or it was a comfortable life, but it was a safer path for sure.
Okay, so on the one hand, you're like honing your art skill, like what we're seeing here. But I want to talk a little bit more about, on the other hand, you're also honing your style, right? So you're cognizant of street art, and you know, as you guys all know who are like street art aficionados, everyone has like their thing, right? Every street artist has like, oh, he's the guy that does that. He's the girl, she's the girl that does that. So I think you knew this too. And so while you were developing your skill, you were also developing like your quote unquote plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about how you were formulating what HULA was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, HULA was never, HULA kind of just came out of so many different projects that I had in mind. I knew I wanted to get into street art. Eventually, I grew up in the graffiti scene on Oahu, so I was, I guess I was always kind of drawn to painting these huge public walls. But it never really kind of came together because I thought in my head the only way to make money from art was going through galleries, and I got to paint this ultra realistic way of these. That's where I would see the how to make a living off of them, and it's kind of that I guess when I decided just to let it go and just paint what I want, and I kind of came up with this concept. Well, I guess I was always kind of inspired by water, so I would slowly, I think we have a picture of, you have the one where I'm like underwater shooting the girl?
Yeah, later.
Later, okay. You guys just
Don't ask too much of this phone, man.
Okay.
It's like struggling right now.
But I always was inspired by water. Surfer boy growing up in Hawaii, it's one of the key influences of my life. But it was, I guess water was always kind of emotionally attached to the paintings, but then it got into the place where it's literally inspiring my paintings. I did this series where I was actually shooting girls underwater, and I really liked just being in water and working art, and somehow came up with this crazy idea to literally float on water and paint next to walls. So it was kind of anyone knows me, I have sketchbooks in my pocket, and I always would just jot down ideas that I have.
Right.
And this one kind of just kept coming up, and I kept kind of working the idea, and the actual surfboard part of it, where I'm actually on the surfboard, didn't come in until later. But it was...
Was that really just like a means? Like, you knew you wanted art near water, but the surfboard part was really just the easiest way for that to happen?
Yeah, I mean, originally I didn't think I'd be able to fit all my gear onto a surfboard.
Right.
So I actually was originally trying to use like portable docks, which is what I'm using out here for the bridge. But when I kind of stepped back and I was reworking the concept of it, I kind of naturally grew up on a surfboard, so it felt like I felt much more comfortable on a surfboard than I did on a 10-foot dock. So that, yeah, and I actually it took a lot of practicing and working techniques that I could use less material and less paint, and I could actually work on a surfboard.
Because most of this is also illegal, right?
Yeah.
Is your lawyer in the room?
I checked with them earlier, so.
Okay. Well, I mean, so there's an issue of like needing to be in and out quick, stealth, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of really hard, I guess, it surprisingly is hard to find abandoned spots along the water, because you think all along the water there'd be some spot that is abandoned that I could paint, but yeah, a lot of spots I had to be in and out, so surfboard made more sense to be able to kind of mobilize and always be on the move.
But did you try this in New York? Did you go in the East River and the Hudson River?
Plead the fifth. No.
Because you'd be missing like a limb right now if you actually tried doing that.
No. Yeah, I actually had some offers to paint along there, and no way.
Okay.
I've seen the studies, and it doesn't look good.
And so, I want to ask too, so like uniqueness must have been a key too, because you knew other street art, right? And so, were you like, yeah, this feels like I've never seen this before?
I think I kind of always try to force myself to kind of see things differently, and I look up to those guys that kind of go down a different path than everyone else. I mean, a lot of I think the guys that tried and true path that what, like in the beginning when I was doing the realism for galleries, like that's the kind of the tried and true path of how to make money. There's a lot of artists that do that. Yeah. And I'm not. They are hugely talented. But I just always felt that I needed to do something that was kind of just me. Like with this series, it kind of felt like everything that had led up to that point in my life kind of just came together, it wasn't forced. I grew up surfing, stumbled into this art, and I kind of grew up in my environment, which is what I kind of did with these girls. The figures are always kind of interacting with the environment around them, which is one of the main, kind of key. I guess this whole series was interacting, and even with most of, I think all of my street art pieces have that same continuity as far as like being able to interact and see how they kind of play with their environment. Yeah,
I mean it's also hard as shit, and no one else can do it. That's that's the other thing. It's hard for people to bite this style. It's because also in graffiti there's that issue of like people going over your art. Like no one's going over your art in these locations.
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't have a problem with.
So one of the things that I wanted you to share with us is the whole process, because I started, when I knew I was going to do this one-to-one, I started to think about like the logistical process of going through this whole thing, because you've got a model involved, you've got photography involved, you've got painting, you've got surfing, you've got weather, there's like all this shit happening. So I want you to walk us through like how the hell this works from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a changing process, because every location I do is so different, especially with these water series. I'm never dealing with the same kind of variables. But yeah, I've kind of learned to kind of adapt to whatever comes at me, and kind of can have my go-to techniques. So like this is a average grid for me. This is actually the grid that I'm using out here on Queensway Bridge this week. So and here's another.
So it starts out like this.
So I do these preliminary sketches. I shoot the models. Usually, I try to use. Usually they're friends of friends that I use to kind of, show a certain, convey certain emotions. So it's always fun to
photograph first.
Yeah. So I photograph.
So this comes first.
Yeah, so I do these, this is in my studio, so this was for an actual underpass that had like this little square. This was in Florida, and
I saw that later.
Yeah.
So you sort of sketch out a reference.
So this one, I like knew the shape of the square under, so I measured it out, and I kind of had her kind of play within it.
Right.
And yeah, that same kind of interacting with
and then
it.
you do a bunch of test shots.
So I did a huge, yeah, I usually shoot a ton of photos, probably, yeah, 200 to 300 photos. Yeah, kind of just have fun with it. Some of them are very specific messages depending on what it's
Here's
for.
another one.
So yeah, this is in my studio, another one.
It's like a stoic shoot. Like you knew you just wanted a head-on portrait.
Yeah, yeah. So this one was a more basic one without. This was another painting I did, actually smaller for a gallery.
That's a painting though, right? That's the photo.
No, that's a photo.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah. But yeah.
That's another photo.
Yeah, because we have the paintings for these later.
And this is actually the last powwow in Hawaii.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, so it's always fun to kind of mix different, whatever. This one kind of had that aloha theme since it was back in Hawaii, and it's going to be like in the center of Kaka'ako. So yeah, I always kind of mix it up a little, and with, yeah, being, yeah, I guess this one wasn't a water one, so I didn't really have to.
This is the one you're referencing.
This was the first one that I was referencing where
You're trying to suffocate, drown
yeah,
women.
it looks like I'm drowning
like
here.
that, yeah.
Yeah, it does. I realize that. So
Wait, I have a
take this down.
I have a very non-PC question. How come you never use like fat, ugly men as your model? Why is it always like beautiful women? It's not fair.
Well, it's just kind of a different feel. No. I've always felt, especially when I go scouting at these, like I always will scout these remote places first, and there's always just a mysterious balance. I don't know if it's like that mermaid, like how we were raised with that siren kind of beautiful young woman kind of luring you in, but I always thought that like these beautiful younger women balanced out these like just lifeless, almost scary looking abandoned places along the water. I mean, even in these abandoned buildings that I kind of paint too, it kind of always feels natural, especially when most of it's around nature. You always kind of, I guess, envision nature as being a female figure. So I always love that balance between them.
Okay, I'll accept that answer.
I'll paint you next.
Here's a studio shot. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the location scouting, right? So which comes first usually? Like you've seen the location that you want, or it's the woman that starts it?
No, it's actually the location most of the time. I
So
did do a couple projects where it was more subject based, but I'd say 90% of the time, it's the location first. I always go scout them and kind of get a feel for it. And I mean, even pictures always don't do its justice because I always feel, what it's like. Like half of the water ones, there's always, different things like tides. There's, even
Ships, currents, like
and even just being there and paddling around, you kind of get a different feel for it.
So there's a lot of this in your work, like sort of illegally scaling things and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's when I get legal stuff like out here to paint huge. I'm always really happy because for one, I get more time and I don't have to really worry about much. Other than we've had a ton of problems rigging this is the biggest water mural I've done this past week. So it's a two 28-foot pylons. So
wow.
it's a big one. I can't just use a surfboard. We had to rig up some scaffold on a kind of a barge, 10-foot barge. So
People can go see it, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a team that you work with on this?
Yeah, I work with, I kind of work with different photographers because photos are a ton of how I document. So I work with different photographers. I always, depending on where it is, I do, like I said, my projects are, as you guys will see, I do some I paint on icebergs and some very, I guess, remote places that require different skills. So I kind of, you pair up different teams
Right.
to what their skill set is. So
Right.
it's always fun to work with different, especially with photographers, because they all kind of see it differently, and it's fun to collaborate.
What's been the most like dangerous location you've chosen?
I definitely say the iceberg ones they've played, like, I guess being from Hawaii, you don't realize a lot of things about cold weather and ice. It's like the opposite place you want to be.
Totally.
But yeah, it's definitely been, I guess, the riskiest. We've gotten into the really hairy, I mean, the project right before this I was in last week was Iqaluit, which is all the way in the Arctic of Canada, and that was definitely some of the scariest moments by far. Just not knowing how ice works, and there's a ton of variables that come with that territory.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is the paint itself, right? So you mentioned that you mentioned to me once that the paint's really expensive. Why is that?
I use oil paint, and I am really careful to use very eco-friendly oil paint, just because a lot of my messages are speaking on either climate change or the environment. So yeah, I do use like high-grade artists. It's very natural, which is really tough when you're working this big. So yeah, I always feel like it's worth it though, to go that extra step just to, not other artists have to really worry about it going directly into the ocean. So.
Yeah, but because of the naturalness of it, it also doesn't have permanence.
Yeah, oil paint, especially the very natural ones that I use, breaks down in sun really fast. So probably my paintings have the longest lifespan of maybe 6 months. Usually within a month. Especially if the tide's going in and out, it'll break it down really fast.
Right. So it's in many ways it's like a graffiti artist who knows his work's going to be buffed.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, nature's my buffer, so I'm always getting capped.
Nature's your cop.
Yeah.
And is that the northern Canada that you mentioned?
This is actually in Iceland. This is the first time I scouted the icebergs. I'm on that bottom left. Trying to figure out, kind of what the hell to do.
Wouldn't you guys agree? Like this, in and of itself, is art already. Like, if there was an artist that was like, "This is my art," you'd be like, "He's amazing." But like, this is just some dude capturing you doing the process of your art. It's sick. So what do we have here? This is on a wall, right? Some wall shots. Yeah.
So this is just some of my process shots. I always, this is, definitely smaller scale stuff, but this stuff I probably get done in, I'd say, a day or two. Not like the one I'm doing out here, so
right.
It'll be a while.
What number SPF do you use?
Yeah.
See, I asked the questions that are on people's minds. What do you want, 90? Or no?
I don't disclose that.
Here's another one. Oh, this is the one that was is this the square one? This one's crazy.
Yeah, so this is actually the one
ladders.
that I showed.
The square.
You could see, right where it's cropped is actually the top of it. So she's kind of playing in that little box. That's that photo shoot that I showed earlier.
And then the ladders are going...
Yeah, so this one...
they look like they're going straight into the water.
Yeah, it's like 6 feet deep, so we were able to kind of shift some rocks around and balance this
2x4 in between.
It looks unsafe, and it really is unsafe. It was very scary.
It looks janky as hell.
Yeah. We were working with the city of Palm Beach, and they weren't too stoked when they passed by.
This next shot's beautiful also. So this is like painting that goes into the night.
Yeah, so this is actually sunrise, finishing up one of the paintings on ice. This was on the beach in Iceland, and kind of was rushing at this point because, I have no idea if painting on icebergs is illegal, but better play it safe.
Yeah. Another beautiful one, water interaction.
Yeah, so this was a abandoned dock that I found, and yeah, this was one of my most recent actually before I headed out to the Arctic.
Sick. This one's also amazing. This one's just,
Yeah, this was one of my first ones I did actually outside of the water, and I just was inspired by this kind of archway. It was kind of a path that you go down, and that other picture where I was going up the ladder. But yeah, I loved how these kind of just archways really opened up into this path. So that's why I played off of that.
yeah. You already have a question? Hold your question, please. Okay, so some more iceberg stuff.
Yeah, this is more icebergs. So one of the reasons why this was pretty dangerous of a project was those screws on the sides where I was anchored into these icebergs, and while I was painting it, actually a lot of them were flipping up, cracking, and flipping over. So it was
Oh,
very.
are you here? Oh, you're down.
I'm down there. I'm by the guitar. But
There we go.
yeah. So here's the final shot of it.
Okay, so I gotta ask this like really specific question. You know you're gonna do a face, and it's gonna be on a huge piece of ice. You go out there, but the ice is constantly shifting, so you don't actually know exactly like which one you're gonna do the day before because it won't be there, right? Or will it? Are they pretty permanent like that?
Yeah. No.
They keep moving, right?
Yeah, they keep moving.
So
And
you're just gonna wing it. You like just go out there and look for one.
yeah, and I thought I would at least have 2 or 3 days to kind of paint this, but I actually ended up having, I think it was 8 hours before it completely, like even when I was painting it, it melted like 2 inches. So I had to get out of there pretty quick.
Dang. You don't look Hawaiian there. You look Eskimo there.
Yeah.
There's another one. This is
Yeah, and so this was that progress shot earlier where the sun was rising.
Yeah.
So that's the sunrise.
So, going back to that process, right? Like, it's one thing for you to create this and then walk away and no one ever sees it. But now you have to document it so that we idiots can see your beautiful work, right? So, like, I mean, this photo is amazing too. Like, so that's like after you're done, you're not really done because now you've got to go through this whole step of documentation.
Yeah, and I mean, luckily we live in a digital world nowadays, so it's it's kind of perfect for what I do because as cool as it is to see the kind of the handful of people that stumble upon my work, it's probably less than 10, but
Yeah, if you didn't take this photo, there'd be like 3 penguins at
Yeah. and yeah, so it's always
Yeah, polar bear. They're like scratching their chins, like.
get some criticism from the polar bears.
Okay, so explain, because this is sort of unauthorized art, but then now you've been getting commissioned a lot to do festivals and things like this and commissioned artwork. What do you feel like is the biggest difference between doing shady legal versus fully legal?
I mean, I think with illegal, I really like the fact that when I'm done, and even though it's kind of like an adrenaline boost. I mean, anyone who graffitis can attest to this, but there's always with that greater risk, there's that greater high, and not that I want to do things illegally. I always I used to try to ask for permission, but it never works out, especially the ones on the water. No one even knew what I wanted to do in the first place. I'd be like, can I borrow your wall in the water for a little bit?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, everyone was just, I mean, it's a huge liability for them, so I don't blame them. But
I would also assume that like when you're doing an iceberg or something, right? like you're not really talking to anyone. There's no one around you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But when you do something like a wall, like at Powwow.
Yeah, that's a huge thing I had to get used to. Yeah, the first festivals I did, I was kind of going crazy just because I'm used to just being in the middle of nowhere, you know, kind of in my own zone. And I mean, it's a cool balance because I like both sides of it. You get to connect with the community. This one was in New Zealand, so I got to really connect with the Maori people, and there's so much similarities between them and Hawaii. So yeah, it was really cool to see that. I guess the differences and you know, you're not looking over your shoulder every 5 minutes. You're actually just, you know, enjoying it and being able to talk story with everyone.
How do you make a living as an artist painting icebergs? How do you monetize now? Like, how do you take that and?
It's definitely, I think with the whole water series, I think the key of it was that I never had money in my head for it, so I kind of didn't really expect much. So I think it drove me to push as far as I did into a realm where I had no idea what to expect. So it was interesting because the farther I got into it, I didn't really have to worry about how I would make a living off of it because people were approaching me with, you know, as far as like, you know, earlier in my career, I would try to fit into like these business models that I thought would, you know, I could make a living off art, but now it was the opposite. You know, they were fitting me into their you know, different campaigns or, you know, different projects. And
you found that the harder you pushed outward, the more people responded to it.
Yeah, I just felt the more I let go of that, just, you know, need for, you know, oh, I need such a positive feedback from this, you know, but I really, when I let go, it was kind of the opposite pole. I've found that, I guess the less I focused on thinking how they thought, the more, you know, opportunities I had. And I'm fortunate to be able to kind of I'm kind of in like this athletic / art world. I get reached, I guess that's where most brands reach out to me, is that kind of in between.
And you do commissions for people. I think we're going through some of your commissions, maybe?
I do commissions and some gallery work. So it's I'm kind of in a lot of different worlds. I'm, you know, one foot's in the fine art, one foot's in the street art, and then I have, you know, out I don't know where the water series puts me, but yeah, it's
environmental art.
So yeah, then I do stuff with this is a broken surfboard, so I kind of have always, like I said, I've been inspired by how I grew up, and it's kind of made, I guess, this little niche that I'm in, it feels very natural for me to just be painting more of my style.
Yeah. And then prints as well.
Yeah, so
this is where you plug your print.
Oh, yeah, I have this.
So 1X Run has printed a HULA print. It's gorgeous.
Stand this up, maybe not. So yeah, I do these limited edition prints, and I've always felt, you know, it's kind of, since most of my stuff is all photography, and you know, I don't really do much originals. So yeah, it's a cool way to just capture my artwork and actually hang them on walls.
Yeah.
So
if someone buys this tonight, will you sign it?
Hand signed it.
Okay.
And
you heard it here.
Wherever you want.
All right. Cool. So you'll be selling these out in the front.
Yeah, and that's with 1X. So
1X Front. Here's another print from the past, right?
Yeah. So this is the final print for the icebergs. There's another final. Yeah. So I've always tried to. It's always I guess in the street art world, you kind of I've never really been drawn to do that much original. So.
Awesome. So I have a funny story. So 2 weeks ago, this sounds so pretentious, but I was in the south of France 2 weeks ago. And I was emailing with Sean about like how we're gonna talk about this thing, like sort of pre-gaming it, right? And we're trying to coordinate a time to talk and all this shit, right? Meanwhile, like, he's also in Cannes, France, in the same exact thing that I'm at. We don't even know, we're emailing each other like as if we're in different time zones. And you were hired by Facebook and Instagram, right?
Yeah.
To do this amazing Facebook. They had so picture this, it's like south of France, 95 degrees on the beach, hot as hell. And they built this like ice cave.
Yeah.
Where they brought in icebergs, basically.
Yeah, it was when we were going back and forth on different ideas, and this idea they were stuck on, and to see that on paper, like they're gonna build literally icebergs on the beach for me to
100-degree
paint
weather,
on.
yeah.
Yeah, it was like I gotta hand it to those guys. They followed through with it because I was pretty hesitant on how they were gonna actually get it done.
And so I was, there was a line to get into this, and I was waiting online to get into this ice room, not knowing, I just wanted to cool off. And they were like, yeah, the wait's like, 45 minutes, and I was like, oh, I can't wait. But imagine I walked in, that would have been so fucking surreal.
Yeah, and I remember emailing in, thinking like, man, I don't know when the next time I'm gonna be in LA is, because I thought you were still back there.
Yeah, it's funny. So you talked about, we're talking about some of the company stuff. Tell us a little bit about this project, I think.
So this is a project I did with North Face. This was actually, I was in Iqaluit, which is it's on Baffin Island, which is the very northeastern part of Canada. North Face gave me pretty much 100% creative freedom on this project, and they just wanted to send me on an expedition, and I kind of, here I got over my head. It was a really cool project we just got back from, and I worked, they're making a short film on it, so.
I think we might have a clip. Is this the clip? No, this is the shot.
Yeah, so it's one of the first times that I actually worked with, full production team that came out with me on a project, so it was really cool to document the whole process. And I think this place, no, maybe not. Screenshot. Oh yeah. So it was, the most beautiful place.
But you're not showing us the actual thing you've made.
Yeah.
When does it come out?
I'm not allowed to disclose what I actually did up there.
When's it come out?
It comes out actually soon. The second week of August is the unofficial launch date. So yeah, it's really cool to be working with these bigger brands like Instagram and North Face. One of the things I, kind of steered clear from is I get approached by a lot of brands that want so much control of every aspect of what I paint, and a lot of it just felt like I was painting billboards, and so we had to pass on a lot of offers. But these two companies, they're some of the biggest in the world, and they gave me, complete freedom to do whatever I wanted, and that's kind of, and just we chatted on the phone a couple of times, and their vision just aligned with what I wanted to do with my art, and I think that's key, is to work with different brands, and I'm fortunate to be able to, pick and choose the brands that align with that same creative process, and to, I guess, the opportunities I'm grateful for, because I never would have thought when I first came up with this series, and even when I first moved to New York, that I could have this much freedom to get paid to do what I love, and see these projects just come to life. Because the North Face project was the idea I had for them was just it was like a little doodle. I remember I wrote down this doodle like on the train in New York like 6 months ago, and it needed a ton of funding, and this opportunity came through. So it was definitely a surreal moment when I was out there.
So do you now have more than $800 in your pocket? Like
Yeah,
you're doing a little bit better than when you
I
went
almost
to New
have
York.
a grand. Come on, buy some prints.
So I want to open it up to Q&A now from the audience. Yeah, we have some time for that. Do you want to go first? You had the first one before.
Oh, sorry by the way for my response. I was looking at that photo of the arch, and instantly I realized that you just turned an experience into something that we could enjoy. So my question to you is, how often do you turn your experiences into what we see?
As wait, sorry.
How often do you turn your experiences into art?
Oh, as far as like
Your real
yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Just real life experiences, right?
Yeah. Because that one was definitely, I think that one was actually one of the closest, as far as personally my journey with art. That piece was definitely, yeah, I would say the most. There's always like hints of it here and there. But yeah, that one was a piece directly at following your heart and, kind of just exploring paths that, might not end up anywhere and kind of just doing it just to do it, take a risk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Try to see. Yes, right there.
I've never painted on ice before, so how do you get the oil paint to stick to the ice?
Yeah, probably one of the most asked questions.
Technical question from an artist.
Can't find that paint in stores now. But I use like a very thin vinyl with transparent gesso to create that tooth. So yeah, it's getting the vinyl to adhere in different ways. So it kind of like freezes onto it at the ice. So yeah, you can kind of lay it down, and if you already prime it, yeah.
Yes, gentleman with the hat on and the nice mustache.
So did you first try on like ice cubes and stuff? Or?
Yeah, it was
Practice on-
actually, yeah, really funny.
Yeah, tell us how you practice.
Yeah, because I remember I basically made these I filled like those huge, like basically the biggest bowl I had in my cupboard full of water and froze it in my freezer. And I had these just massive, I think they were like 2 foot, just like weird shaped ice cubes. And I had them in my bathtub trying to like figure out, okay, what surfaces do I need to paint? And I remember my friends would come over and be like, what are you doing? And I would be like, don't worry about it, it's for a project. And it's crazy because every project I have has so many different techniques that I kind of need to learn. And it's weird to have these weird, I guess, you kind of learn. There's just so many different variables that I need to learn, and I might not even use that for any other project in my life, but I need to learn how to do it in 3 weeks. So it's always a fun challenge. Yeah, and I love experimenting. I think it's probably I design a lot of my own tools, especially on the board. I use like magnets so that things don't go overboard, and I made this metal sheet that goes on top of my stand-up board. So there's all these tips and tricks that you can use, and yeah, it's always just a matter of figuring out what problems to solve, and yeah.
I'd imagine not all ice is equal too, right? Like the ice that you made is probably different than Iceland, different than Canada.
Yeah, the things I was searching on like the weirdest blogs on like Eskimos that would do like reviews on these ice screws, and the weirdest things, and I have like weirdest fun facts in my head about like
Eskimo life, yeah.
what temperatures saltwater freezes at, and all these weird, yeah, I kind of, yeah.
Any other questions out there? Yep, straight in the middle.
Yeah. What first gave you the idea to paint on an iceberg?
It was actually a piece that was geared towards climate change. So being from Hawaii, I had a high value of kind of taking care of the land, and I knew that with kind of the success that I was coming off of, I wanted to really have a piece that wasn't, I guess, just kind of spread awareness on the platform that I did have. So yeah, I wanted to kind of originally I didn't have it on an iceberg. I was gonna have it on a mountain, kind of a snow mountain, but of course trying to always fit my surfboard in there, ended up going with the iceberg and yeah, having, because I thought, you know, what better way to kind of raise urgency than this girl melting into water, into the ocean. So yeah, that's where that idea came from.
We have one last question that we can have. Yes. Yep.
It's kind of two parts. Number one, did you always make sure you were at low tide when you did the water series? And number two, I also have a lot of art that I would like to do in public, and I've been kind of scared to do things illegally. Do you have any advice?
Second
How
part,
should she break the law?
second part I might have to discuss afterwards with my lawyer. No, but wait, sorry, what's the first question? I got distracted.
Low tide.
Oh, yeah, so with low tide, it's kind of always different because tides usually, I guess, yeah, it depends because there's so much variables. There's like the barnacle line, which I can't paint on. So if that's the case, then I didn't really have to paint at low tide. I would just paint, you know, as far as I could, and then wait till high tide to kind of capture the shot. But yeah, most of the time I'll do it at low tide. You usually have around 6 hours before the high tide comes in. And yeah, by then I have by then oil paint. Another thing that using oil paint, it doesn't mix with water, so it doesn't just wash off. If you get it on there at low tide, it'll stay on there. So it's another perk to using oil.
Wait, I gotta ask the last question. 6 hours on the surfboard, where do you use the bathroom? Mother Nature.
Ocean is your bathroom.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Also, should I answer that second question?
Oh, you should answer it privately if you don't want
Okay.
to. Yeah.
I think I do have a really good lawyer that advises me what to say and what not to say, so we'll have to talk later.
All right, and with that, I want to thank you for coming. Everyone, give them a big clap.
My style is kind of a mix of both traditional portrait figures and street art, as well as, you know, interacting with the environment. This piece especially is just, the scale of it is massive, so it's going to be the biggest piece I've done on water. It's really cool. It's the first time I've been able to kind of do a legal wall that I can have so much time with.